It's just like on TV.
I told you, this is professional shit here.
Don't make me laugh.
You said shit.
That's a good English word.
Oh yeah, that's where we're from.
Okay, I know it sounds silly, but you got to give me your name and your relationship to the family.
My name is Joan.
No, you're going to look at me the entire time.
Okay.
Perfect.
My name is Joan Jones. I'm married to Bruce Jones, who is your uncle, who is the second son of the Jones family. I married him 49 years ago.
What year?
1957.
Are you getting those guys? I can't tell. Let's pause. And your relationship to the Jones family?
My name is Joan Jones, and I'm married to Bruce Jones, which is the second son of the Jones family. That's 1957. We were married in 1957. I was only 5 years old.
When you met? So Bruce is kind of a pedophile, is what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
This is
going to go well.
This can be edited, can it? I don't want everybody to know how old I am.
Oh, okay. I was only 5. How did you meet Bruce?
I came from Chicago, and I moved into a guest house up on Pacific Avenue in San Francisco, and he and his brother, Creighton, lived there. And that's how I met him, in a guest house on Pacific Avenue, San Francisco.
Obviously, this is how you met Creighton, too.
Yes, I was at dinner one night, and I turned around and asked, they didn't look alike to me, and I turned around and I asked if they were brothers. And they both looked at me like I was an idiot and said, yes. That's how I met them. I'm so aware of this thing.
Well, don't be. You're doing great. It's just, you're animated. It's very good. What was life like in San Francisco? You were living in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And what was life like before you met Bruce and then after?
Well, I was well, actually, that's a nice question, because I was very homesick. I had come out from Chicago, and I was very homesick, and I had just been fired from my first job here in San Francisco, and I was kind of depressed. And I met Bruce, and I started laughing and started having a good time. And he kind of pulled me out of my depression, because we started laughing and having a good time, and I went out and got another job. He probably saved me from going back to Chicago, if you want to know the truth. I was having a good time.
Would that have been horrible if you had to go back to Chicago?
No, but I didn't want to. I had quit a good job in Chicago, and I wanted to. 5 girls from college came out together, and we moved into this guest house, and that's where I met Bruce and Creighton. And he actually was very instrumental in making me have a good time. You know, I started laughing again and started having a good time in San Francisco. How am I doing?
That's awesome. I never knew about that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
No, that's the truth, though. That really is the truth.
Did you guys throw a lot of parties in Fairfax? Obviously, we'll just in capsule form, go to when you met and how long it took you to get married, and also when you moved to Fairfax and started.
Okay, we were married about a year after we met, and then my aunt from Chicago was out visiting, and we'd been married about I was pregnant with my oldest child, just pregnant, and we took my aunt over to Marin County to see.
I was pregnant with my oldest child. Who?
Christopher, Kit.
Well, say the whole sentence again.
I was pregnant with my first child, and we were just had an apartment.
Pregnant with my first child, Kit.
Kit, and my aunt.
Wait, I don't want to guide you too much.
No, that's okay. Do it.
But say the whole sentence. I was pregnant with my first child, Kit.
And my aunt had come. I was pregnant.
Okay.
You
have to repeat that.
I was pregnant with my first child, Kit. And then it was in the summertime, and my aunt had come from Chicago, and we took her over to Marin County, and there was an ad in the real estate office for a house in Fairfax, and we just went up to take a look at it, and I fell in love with it. And that's how we moved to Fairfax.
Beautiful. What was life like in Fairfax? I mean, before the kids, and then we'll go into the kids more in a little bit. But what was life like living up there on the hill? I mean,
Well, I loved it because it was just at the time when the Eichler home was being built, where every house was like the next house next door to it. And I loved it up there because the oaks were beautiful, and I just loved it up there. And we had this shacky little house, and I told all my friends they had to come and see my new house, and then they'd come and see it, and they'd just die and say, ugh. They didn't like it at all. But I did. I loved the trees and the backyard, and I loved it. And we started having our family. And so...
Any parties prior to that? Or?
Yes, we had parties. Yeah, we had parties.
A lot of entertaining, or?
Not really. Not really, because I was pregnant for the next 4 years.
Right. Okay.
So, no, not really a lot of parties.
Okay.
It was back in the 50s. I was playing the role of Father Knows Best. All I did was cook and wait on my husband. You can edit this, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. No, this is. I love it when Joni, you are the most animated so far. I have to admit. You remember Sid? Do you remember?
Yes, I do.
Yes, I
Tell
me about Sid a little bit.
He was wonderful. He had a wonderful sense of humor, and he lived up in Napa in this ranch house. And we would go and visit him. And when I would come, he would say, "Well, I never take a drink before 6 o'clock, but because you're here, let's have a drink." So it might be 11 o'clock in the morning. We'd have a little, a little shot. And then we'd take the kids up there. He was a very funny man, very funny. And we'd take the kids up there, and he used to say all the time, "One word from Joan, and the kids do as they damn please." But yes, I do remember him. He was nice, very nice guy. And
So you guys obviously got along.
yes, yeah, he had a great sense of humor. And
I'm sorry, how's the audio? Because it kind of dropped. Okay.
So
I'm just going to fix it a little bit. You sure, Wayne? Because it was rubbing against.
I didn't hear any noise.
Okay. Sid was with who at the time?
well, he was married to Faye, his wife Faye. And
I don't know if I'm going to use a lot of Faye stuff. So, but just really quickly, can you tell me how how you got along with Faye?
I got along with Faye very well. I actually did. She was I got along with her very well. She had problems, and she died at a very young age. And she was very nice to me. She was always real nice to me.
You guys would sit down and have a heart to heart, or talk?
No, probably not. Probably not. Probably not. I think I was closer to Bruce's Aunt Ruth than I was to Faye. But the kids, they had this big ranch house up in Napa, and we used to go up there, and the kids would run around and stuff like that. And the kids were very close together in age, and I wasn't real close to Faye, no, but she was real nice to me. She was always really nice to me, and I always had a good time up there.
Okay, now
I liked his dad a lot.
We can segue into the Milpitas connection with Ruthie and Weller. What do you remember from Ruthie and Weller?
They were great. They were great. They were always really good to me, and I really liked them. And my parents would come out and visit, and they used to go down and visit with them. And when I was married, they took care of my parents and everything, and they were really good to my parents and stuff. And my husband Bruce didn't want to be married, didn't want to go back to Chicago to be married because I had 3 brothers, and I think he wanted to go back already married. So we had the marriage out here, and my parents came out, and Ruth and Weller were wonderful to my parents, and I liked them. I really liked them a lot. They were always really.
Any special memories, as far as barbecue? Remember the barbecues?
The barbecues were wonderful. They were wonderful. I do have a really nice memory, a funny memory. I had a baby in March of 1962, and then Bart. And then I had, 6 weeks later, I became pregnant again. So I had 2 babies in 1 year. So Bruce said, this is a very funny story. Bruce said, please, at the family picnic, don't mention the fact that you're going to have another baby. And his Aunt Ruth was sitting next to me, and his Aunt Marion was sitting in front of me, and I couldn't resist. And I said, I have a wonderful announcement. And I said, I'm going to have a baby. And they both fainted. And so then I called my parents to tell my parents that I was having a baby. My mother had just gotten back from Chicago from taking care of me with Bart. And I called them up and I said, I have an announcement to make. And my mother said, what? And I said, are you sitting down? And she said, what is it? Is everything all right? And I said, I've got an announcement. I'm going to have a baby. And my mother said, oh, I'm falling down. And then my dad got on the phone and he said, Joan, do you know what's causing this? That's a true story.
Jack, typical Jack. Yeah, can we pause? This fell, so I'm gonna. So let's move on to Christmas and Thanksgiving. I remember when I was growing up, we had a lot of fantastic holidays that we spent together.
Well, you're
from the time that we were in Novato, but mostly Los Altos. I guess we ended up in Fairfax, but.
Yeah. Well, your mother and I would exchange. 1 year she'd do Christmas, and then I'd do Thanksgiving. The next year I'd do blah, 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 like that. And then next year I would do Christmas. And so we did that for years. And yeah, I have a lot of very nice pictures of all of you.
Any specific things that occurred with your crazy clan of kids that, and me and Scott, you know, I get the feeling that Kit, Matt, Bart, and Tim were much more animated and fun as far as the practical jokes and all that other crap. Of course, they were a little bit older. So.
Yes, they were older than you. I can't think of anything offhand except that that's how we would do it. You know, we used to have Christmas dinner.
We used to do a lot of Tahoe stuff too, didn't we?
Yes, we went out to Tahoe. And then when Tim, we rented a house every year, and after Tim had his automobile accident, we rented that house every year, and it was just fun to go up there and, you know, and with the families and.
I remember vividly. I remember all of those trips, even though I was, you know, a little shit, and then.
Yeah.
I remember hanging out and just, you know, sitting in awe of the 4 jerks, you know, pretty much making fun of the rest of us, you know.
They were bad boys. They were very bad boys. But I love them dearly.
We covered any other fond memories of Sid?
Oh gosh, he just had a very good sense of humor. He had a very good sense of humor, and
can you remember any of the lines that maybe he threw
oh
into?
gosh.
We can come back to it.
I can't think of anything. He just had a very good sense of humor, and he had his bourbon in a jelly glass, and that's what I used to remember is the bourbon in a jelly glass, and with no ice, and and we'd sit in the chairs in this kitchen, and we'd drink at 11 o'clock in the morning.
I think that's what Kit said too.
Did he really?
He said something about the jelly glass, right?
Yeah.
Talk to me about. Do you remember Cappy?
Yes, I do remember Cappy. I do remember Cappy. Cappy is a darling little boy. This is one of the stories. Creighton brought Cappy over one time. He was just a little boy. And Creighton said, I had 5 little boys under 5 that night. And Creighton said, let's have martini. Can I tell this story on tape?
Absolutely.
I said, let's have some martinis, and then we can get through this taking care of these kids tonight. And so I did. And then, of course, I was the one that put the 5 little boys to bed. And with many martinis under my belt. So I decided I couldn't do that anymore. It didn't work very well. But anyway, Cappy was wonderful. He was, I didn't see a lot of him, But he was wonderful. He was a darling little kid. Darling, darling little kid. I'll always remember him standing at the dining room and looking at me with a pained look on his face as he was filling his pants that night. And he just looked at me with a pained little look. But he was a cute kid. He was really a cute kid.
And later on in life, do you remember?
Yeah, I remember, well, I remember a party. He was at a party once at your house in Los Altos, but I didn't see that much of him, you know, because he lived in Fresno. You know, I didn't see that much of him after. But he was a neat kid. He was a neat kid. I always felt kind of sorry for him. I don't know why, but I did. But he was a nice kid. And he was just a nice kid.
Okay, we can move on. Anytime you want to just, you know,
Yeah. Oh,
cut
okay.
yourself off. And I thought I was going to be telling you to shut up every 5 seconds during this, but
Am I doing okay?
you're doing great. I haven't said shut up once.
No.
Okay, now let's talk about these crazy kids of yours.
Well, I love to talk about my sons. And as you know, we've lost Bart and Tim, which this fall will be 17 and 21 years since they've died. I know it's hard to believe it's been that long, but it has. And I say in my prayers every night for God to take care of them. But anyway, they were very, very fun kids to raise. I mean, the funny stories are unbelievable. And I will tell one quick story.
You're going to tell a lot of them, and I'm counting on this.
Well,
This is funny.
they made a mistake at the school district one year to combine the 4th and 5th grades, and Bart and Tim were in the same class together. This was in June when I found out about it, and I thought, should I say something to the school about perhaps separating the two of them? And then I thought, no, this is none of my business. I mean, the school is the one that is educating them. But as it turned out, they were in the same grade for 4th and 5th grade together. And I was down at school every 3 weeks at least, getting them out of trouble. They knew it wasn't that they caused trouble, it was their mouths. There was a lot of, they could be very funny together. They would bounce off. One was the straight man, one was the comic, and they bounced off each other humor-wise. And so finally, Miss Meese was the teacher, and I would get dressed up purposely when I would go for these meetings because I wanted them to think that they came from a decent family. So I would get dressed up. And then towards the end of the school year, it was a disaster by this point. And towards the end of the school year, I went in. Miss Meese never said hello to me, never said anything. She just shook her head like this. And I said, would you like to know what their home life is like? And she said, no. But I was down at school a lot, but it was mostly humorous things. It wasn't anything that they were doing, you know, they weren't destroying the school or doing anything like that. But Bart in kindergarten was, and then I'll quit talking about this, but
I
Bart,
want you to keep going.
Bart in kindergarten was made Santa Claus in the school play. And I was down there a lot that year too with him. And the kindergarten teacher said he was a darling little boy. And the kindergarten teacher said, if he doesn't stop fooling around, I'm going to make him a Christmas tree. He's not going to be Santa Claus. So that year I went to the play, and I was very nervous because you don't want the teacher not to like your child. He was wonderful as Santa Claus, but the teacher was looking at me behind, shaking her head. But they were wonderful kids, and I was very lucky to have had them. Very lucky. But they were, you know, they were just ordinary boys growing up.
Yeah, right.
But they were wonderful, and I often look back, and I have to put this in my mind, I was so lucky to have known them. You know, that's where I have to look at it.
There was an instance where they used to fight in class, do the fake fighting thing.
Yeah, oh
Can
yeah.
you cover that a little bit?
Yeah, well, they knew how to do it without hurting each other.
Do what?
You know, slug and this kind of stuff. And Bart used to know how to do all this kind of stuff. He used to make movies, and that's what he used to do. But they were just very, very enjoyable. I remember one time with Bart that he had been, they wanted him to settle down in class a little bit more, so I had a conference down there with he was in first grade, and there was a couple of teachers there and the principal, and so Bruce and I went, and we were sitting at the table, and they weren't ready for Bart to come in yet, and so they said, Bart, wait out in the schoolyard. And I didn't say anything, but of course I thought, what a dumb thing to do. He'll just run away, which he did. But I found him and brought him back. Very happy memories raising those two. I had to go down recently because we had a mudslide on our property. I had to go down to the building department in Fairfax to get information on our property, and the file was this big. And somebody there laughed and said, I bet, what's the police file next door? I said, it's bigger. But anyway.
All the kids kind of had a run.
Yeah. But anyway.
If you don't mind, I would love to touch on Bart and Tim much more and some of the stuff that they did, because I mean, I laughed my head off when I was growing up with those guys.
Did you really?
Absolutely. They were the funniest guys I've ever met in my life. And it sucks that they're not around.
Yeah, it really does.
Trips, and I remember a lot of really fun stuff. Can you pause for a second? Explain their humor. Explain what has kind of trickled down to us as well. But Matt still has it. Kit still has it. I mean, it's that Jones humor. I mean, it's really kind of, you know, it's kind of intellectual, isn't it? When you say it?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. But
it's deeper than just dumb humor.
I don't know. You get a conglomeration of genes, I think, and that's what comes out. And I did run into a friend of theirs, and in Fairfax recently, who knew all the boys. And I said, I just was casual. They were talking about our kids, and I said, I think they were kind of popular in school, weren't they? And he said, no, that wasn't what it was. He said they were the funniest kids in school. And I think it was the knack of, with Bart and Tim was rather the quiet one, and Bart was the outgoing one, and the combination was good. Tim was the straight man, and Bart would feed on the lines, and I think that was it. What made it so funny.
I would have guessed that
yeah.
Bart was the.
Yeah.
But the combination was.
The combination was funny together, and it was funny because. On the outside world, they were very good friends. On the inside world, everybody, in the inside of the house, they were all fighting like cats and dogs. But on the outside world, they were very, good to each other. I was very lucky. Very lucky.
Kit told a story earlier about, they were hanging out downstairs, and all of a sudden the dummy came over from the roof.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh. Well, this is a really funny story. My aunt came out to visit me from Chicago, and she was kind of nervous type, and we were coming around a curve in the road, and Bart was a movie maker, and he had a life-size dummy, and it was just part of our furniture, and you'd find it, and it's just part of the house. And so this one day we're turning around a curve, coming up our hill, as the dummy is being dropped off the hill. So all you see is a complete body coming down, and my aunt almost had a nervous breakdown. And I did too. I didn't know at the time that it was the dummy. And then one other time, Bruce and Creighton's Aunt Ruth was over, stayed with us, and Weller had died. And she was in the bedroom, get in bed, and she was talking to somebody. And I walked in, and I said, Ruthie, who are you talking to? And she looked over, and of course the dummy was sitting in a chair. And she was talking to the dummy, because her eyesight had gone a little bit, And I said, Ruthie, who are you talking to? And she said, well, who's sitting there? And it was the dummy. The dummy was part of the household, you know what I mean? One of the little things in our life.
I don't remember the dummy. I don't remember that lying around.
Yeah, it was just there. They took it.
Ruthie talking to this person.
Yeah, and I said, Ruthie, who are you talking to? And she said, well, who is that?
The best audience I've ever had. Tell me about Bart and his filmmaking and what he did.
He was always interested in filmmaking, and he went to ACT acting school for a year, and he was just always interested in it. I don't know why. The first time he made a film, I did the camera work, and he had me up in the mountains, and with all his friends, and I was exhausted when I got home. But he just always was interested in it. He always was.
What kind of films?
Well, it was 8mm. I don't know what kind of, Well, they were always They were always had to do with adventures, adventures of some sort. A lot of blood, a lot of ketchup, And one of the things, one day, Bart was up on the top deck of our bedroom, and with a bottle of ketchup, and I said, "I've had it. I've just had it with wiping up ketchup. No more ketchup." So, but he was just always interested in it, and he didn't necessarily want to be an actor as much as a director, I think. He loved making movies. And Raiders of the Lost Ark was his favorite, and he made me sit down there one day, and I'm always glad I did that. Made me, "You gotta see this, Mom, you gotta see this." So I was always glad that I did that. I look back now and all the things, I have to look at the good things that happened. And
what were some of the names of his films?
well, one is The World of Hell. Oh, God.
What takes place in that film?
Well, actually, it's nothing but a bunch of kids running around with great with great effects. And one of the things he could do is he knew how to put a pellet in a gun, and shoot the gun, and have the powder come out like a real gun. And this one Easter vacation, he was making this film, and it did end up being called The World of Hell. He made this film in Fairfax, and they were down in the creek with guns, shooting guns, and the police drove by, and here are these guns going off down in the creek. And the police said, "What is going on down here?" And Bart said, "Look, it's Easter vacation. I have every loser in town in my movie. You're going to have a real easy week." That's a true story. So, but anyway, he was just always interested in movie making. And he was very good at it. And he knew he had, one scene was a pitchfork going into somebody's back, and then the blood sliding down a garage door. Oh, dear. But anyway.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it 1,000 times.
Have you?
What are some of the other titles? He's got at least 2 or 3 films.
Yeah, he did. I can't remember the other titles. I gotta look for them. I can't remember, but they were always when I look back on it, they were kind of bloody. They were always fights, and he always used, Fairfax is a great town to make a movie in because there were the hills, and
A sleepy little town.
it was a sleepy little town. And one of the things he did one time was, and this is the only bad thing he ever did, he went in the Catholic Church, and he was such a darling kid. He took what are those fire extinguishers, and set them off in the hills, he and a friend. But that was the only bad thing he ever did. God knows why he did that.
I shouldn't have interrupted, because your laugh would have been better to have. God. He never did anything bad. Can you go into Tim a little bit more? And also Matt and Kit. Remember, you have 2 other kids.
Yeah. Well, let's see.
Kids.
I don't know. What can I tell you? They were just wonderful to raise. They were just very, very funny kids. And
I just remember the humor. The humor was so important to everybody. Everything was a joke. They were always giving you a hard time, and you were always laughing at them.
Well, they were just very funny kids. Raising kids, you don't know whether you're doing it right or wrong. And many years later, one of their friends said, "Oh, we love to come to your house." And that made me feel better, because I always felt I was a bad mother, because I was yelling at them all the time. But I loved them. It was just, I was yelling at them all the time. And so one kid said, "Oh, we used to love to come to your house." So that made me feel better, that I wasn't so bad a mother as I thought I was.
You weren't screwing up as much as you
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, I was very lucky to have had them. They were great. They were very different.
If you had one word to say about Kit, what would that be?
He was a rock. He was the rock of the family. He was the one that took life. Being the eldest, I think it's sometimes the hardest to be the eldest of a family. But he was always very dependable. You could always, really, seriously, he was always there for you. You know what I mean? You could always rely on him. And I always, he just was,
But
you know.
finicky.
Well, yeah, but that was my fault. That was my fault.
You let him get away with it, probably.
Well, no, I was neurotic as far as little things go. Well, I guess when I put them to, I think of your father. When I put them to bed at night, the sheet always goes over the blankets, right? Don't you go to bed and put the sheet over the top of the blankets and pull the covers up? Well, I guess I tucked the kids in that way, and your father took care of them one night and called me up where I was, and he said, "How the hell do you ever put these kids to bed at night? I'm doing it wrong." And I said, "Well, you take the sheet and you fold it over the blankets." And then Kit was happy. You do it right, you know. Kit was 5 years old and going to kindergarten, and my mother walked him down to the bus one day. And then as he got down to the bus, he took each kid and lined them up, and each kid lined up, did it. And my mother came back home and she said, "I can't believe it. He got all those kids all lined up, ready to get on the bus, and they did it." So he was kind of the rock of the family.
Kind of a leader, too.
Yeah, when you did something, you did it right. But that's a personality trait, I think. He also is an electrician, and he checks people's shorts. No,
That's what?
he checks people's shorts.
Oh.
No, edit that out.
Definitely.
Anyway, but he put the electrical work in our house, and same way with the sheets, like pulling the sheets over. He was putting the wiring in our living room, and I said, "Sheetrock is going to go over that," and he said, "But I will know." So he's probably a trait of perfectionism in what you're doing at the moment, that type of thing.
Right.
Okay.
Matt, if you had to explain that.
Brilliant in math, absolutely brilliant in math. He was, this is a true story. He and Kit were in a math class together, and the math test was passed out to Matt first, and by the time it got to Kit on the other end of the room, Matt had finished the test. He was just very good at math. I was very bad at math. He was wonderful. Matt is wonderful.
Yeah, watch it. I think he's up there.
Oh, don't listen, Matt. Is wonderful. He's wonderful. He's
Matt really has one of the bizarrest sense of humor I've ever seen. and it's trickle down stuff too, because he's got me doing it. You know?
Yeah.
I'll check it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He and I greet each other with a Don't ask me what it means. It's just So if you pick up the phone and say hello, Matt, it's
And Bart had that too.
Yeah, it's just idiosyncrasies within a family, I guess.
Yeah. But Bart was constantly doing that silly
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I have to tell you one very funny story about my children. My father would come out and play. You might have to edit this out.
That's okay.
My father would come out and play basketball with my children. My dad had a real good eye for hitting the basket. Bart and Tim and the boys would play around the world basketball in the backyard. And my dad would have a smile on his face occasionally, but he would play just around the world. One day he came in and he was laughing. And he was laughing so hard. And I said, "What's the matter? What are you like?" He said, "I've got to tell you this one. Your children will say something to me to make me miss the basket. And sometimes it is bad, sometimes it's really bad, but this one is the worst. And I said, what did he say? He said, my dad was laughing so hard he could barely stop. And he said, what? I said, well, what did they say? And I was always slightly worried they might say something wrong to my parents. And he said, well, just before I went to shoot the basket, Bart said, did you know that our father raped Grandma? Now you might have to edit that out. And my dad was laughing so hard. And I said, oh, I knew they were saying things out there.
That's the Jones. That's seriously. That's where.
Isn't that terrible?
Really
that you better edit.
That's wrong.
You better edit that one
That
out.
stays, man. That is such a keeper. You won't believe it. Wasn't there a time when you had broken your foot?
Oh, okay.
Downstairs and
My back.
your
Well, what?
broke something.
Was it too?
And then the next thing you know, one of your kids wasn't helping in any way. He just started shooting.
Oh yeah, the mean film,
Yeah.
the film. I broke my back, and I didn't know it, and they had to call the. I went to bed. I didn't know it. I stepped off the top stair and I broke the 3 vertebrae in my middle of my back, not near the spinal cord. Okay, and the next morning I was paralyzed, and I never thought that I could have really injured myself. I knew that I had fallen, but I had fallen on carpeting, so I didn't think. So anyway, I couldn't move, and Bruce panicked, and he called the ambulance, and the ambulance driver pulls up, and they take me to the hospital. Anyway, I get in the ambulance, and the ambulance driver is shaking his head. He said, you know, the weirdest thing, he said, we're being filmed. And I said, oh, he said, there's a boy on top of a garage filming this whole thing. And I said, that's just my son. So it's all on film. That's a true story.
Can we find that footage?
Sure, probably.
See, I need to find all this stuff.
Yeah, probably somewhere. I've got it.
Okay. Kid told me that story. I fell apart. I mean,
Yeah.
typical filmmaker.
Yeah, he was filming it.
Yeah.
And at the time I could have been paralyzed, but you know, I was laughing because of my idiot children. But it's been a good life.
That was the next question. Let's sum it all up.
Okay.
Let's sum it up from meeting the Joneses and moving in as a Jones and becoming a Jones and having kids and up to.
Well, I've been very, very fortunate because the combination of my husband's genes and my genes, we got 4 of the greatest kids. I was so lucky to have had the kids that I've had. I mean, that sounds like a mother, but I mean it. They've been a joy. When the chips are down, they're always there, you know, and stuff like that. But once again, it's humor that we've kept the humor in it, and I think that's important. And I miss Bart and Tim something terribly, but I have to look at it like I was lucky to have known them. That's how I have to look at it. But one more cute story. I go out to the cemetery on their birthdays and on the days that they died, and not so much anymore because I'm not doing it as often as I did before. But the other 2 boys would call up and say, "Are you going out there today?" And I'd say, "Yeah," and there would be no laughs or anything. They said, "Well, don't forget to tell them this, and don't forget to tell them that. Now remember this, now don't forget." And so I'd go out to the cemetery and tell them, and it wasn't funny. We weren't laughing about it. It was stuff that must be done. So I would go out and sit by their graves and tell them all this stuff. And last September, I went out September 29th and did my thing. I trim up the gravestones and polish the stones and stuff like that. And I'm out there talking to them. And my dad said one day to me, I told my dad this, and my dad said, "Oh, they hear you. There's no doubt about it." So I hope. So anyway, to sum it all up, I met my husband, and this coming February we will have been married 50 years. Can you imagine? That's not normal, is it? to be married that long.
Can you look in the camera and say that? Is that normal?
Is that normal? You know what Larry King says? Larry King, psychiatrist, said he is doing it right. To be with the same person for 50 years would be terribly, terribly boring. So, am I through?
Almost. I'm having everyone say this, and I don't know why, because this is just not our style, but if you can just say, we, and I need you to separate it with a pause. We are the Joneses. Into the camera.
Okay. We are the Joneses.
Now do it one more time, but don't look at me. Just
Oh,
all into
okay.
the camera. All
Okay.
into the camera.
You didn't get my nose from that side, did you? We are the Joneses.
Perfect. You're the only person who's been able to do that correctly so far. Let me just think if I can't think. We can always get room tone, right?
Yeah, you can even do
I haven't even thought of it
You
until
can
now.
even do that in soundtrack.
Okay. No, I'm not going to worry about it. It's not that big a deal. But anything else you can think of that we've left out that I didn't ask that is important?
Keep smiling. No, I can't think of anything.
I was thinking more on the level of. I could kick myself for not doing this, but we haven't even mentioned Sydney and Art really at all.
Well, Sydney and Art are half brothers and sisters of your father and Bruce, and Sydney lives in San Anselmo, and where does Artie live now?
Cool.
Cool. That's right. Cool, California. They are the half brothers and sisters of the family, and I think probably maybe not as tied in with the Jones family. Do you think? I don't know.
That's what I was trying to. I was wondering whether I should include Craig and Mark, but I mean, I didn't grow up with Craig and Mark, and you guys never saw Craig and Mark growing up.
Well, they were cut. No, they.
And Artie was always kind of, he'd pop in.
Yeah. They were. Well, what happened is they had different families, like being half brothers and half sisters.
They went to the other side.
They went to the other side of the family. There were more cousins, like on the. God, I can't think of their left. Faye side of the family, and we always spent the holidays with the two boys, Bruce and Creighton. Always spent the holidays together, and then Sydney and Art were the half brothers and sisters, and were closer to. Well, they were close to Bruce and Creighton too, but they went more with the holidays. I don't even remember.
I don't either.
I don't.
I can't remember one time when we all sat down and had a meal.
All four kids.
And not until later in life.
Yeah. The holidays, we were mostly Bruce and Creighton spent the holidays back and forth. And then my parents would come out sometimes for Christmas. I can remember that. And they would spend with, not necessarily, I don't think, what was Faye's last name? I can't think of her. Anyway, we didn't really spend the holidays together, did we?
I read it recently. I can't remember her last name. Artie brought me that book, the book of Eliezer Jones and.
Oh.
Way down and,
Oh, okay.
I think you can cut my line.
Okay.